Hello, everyone who's tuned in on YouTube. I pray that you're ready for a good lesson. This is going to be one that you are probably familiar with, uh, as usual, what I generally like to do is to go in between the lines. And this one here, I plan to do quite a bit of going in between the lines, pulling out things that we probably haven't seen before and putting some attention on them. Our lesson will be coming from Mark chapter 9, verses 14 to 29. Mark chapter 9, verses 14 to 29. The name of the lesson is called Jesus' Authority Over Demons. Jesus' Authority Over Demons. I'm Wayne Hubbard. I am the pastor at Grace Temple Baptist Church in the city of Oakland, 6750 Foothill Boulevard. The next time you're in this area, I would be very happy to see you if you came in and worshiped with us at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. Now, all of you who haven't yet subscribed, please feel free to do that. Something I'm looking forward to is that you subscribe to my channel. And those of you who have, God bless you. I am thankful for you. Yes, I am. Now, at the end of this lesson, if you found it helpful, give me a thumbs up for that. Give me a nice big thumbs up, and I appreciate that. Good. Okay, I tell you what. Let's get ready to go to the lesson. If you're there at the Gospel according to Mark, chapter 9, verse 14 to 29. A little bit of background. I'm just not going to just jump right in here. And then you'll have to put it together as we go along. Let me do that first right now, a little bit of background. Jesus, of course, was about halfway through his ministry in the area of Galilee. At the time of our lesson, Jesus and three of the disciples weren't in Galilee. They had ventured off to a place that we're not totally certain where it is, but it was called the Mount of Transfiguration. Transfiguration was when Jesus went to this short mount, and he turned into a glow. Is what he did. He glowed, and his face, everything glowed, and he was talking to two other figures that was there also, who was glowing as well. They were glorified. The other two figures that was there, who they were Moses, and it was also Elijah was there also. So they were there, and Jesus was talking to them, and they were talking to Jesus at this point. Three of Jesus' disciples, his closest disciples, saw this. And of course, they didn't understand what was going on. But when it was over and Jesus came down from the mount, he let them know who it was that he was talking to. Two main Old Testament figures who Jesus was talking to during this time. Jesus told the disciples, when we get back to Galilee, don't tell anybody about this. Be quiet about it, hush about it. So they start heading back to Galilee. Jesus had three of his disciples with him, as I just got through saying. But 9 of his disciples was left in Galilee. Let's take a look at it and see what was going on when Jesus was arriving back in Galilee, where 9 disciples were that he had left, and he was bringing himself and the 3 other disciples that went to the Mount Transfiguration. And they were coming back, starting with verse number 14, 15, and 16. It says here, and when he came to his disciples, he saw a great multitude about them, and the scribes was questioning them. And straightway the people, when they beheld him, were greatly amazed, and running to salute him. People who saw Jesus coming, they were happy to see Jesus coming, people in the crowd. And they ran to him, happy to salute him. That salute means just to greet him. Happy to see him coming back from wherever he was. They didn't quite know. Verse 16 says, and Jesus, it says, and he asked the scribes. Jesus came in and focused right on the scribes who was questioning his 9 disciples that was there. Jesus asked him in verse number 16, he asked the scribe, what question ye them? Let me tell you who the scribes are. Scribes, when you come across that in the New Testament, are men who, they generally they're experts of the scriptures, but they're not really. But they come across like they know everything in the scriptures. They don't have to pick up a scroll and read it. They know everything by heart, is what the scribes are. And so the scribes here are questioning Jesus' disciples, who was left behind, the 9 disciples. And Jesus, being who he is, he's going to protect his people. He's going to protect them. He asked the scribes, what are you talking to my disciples about? A large crowd of people had surrounded the 9 disciples, and they were waiting for Jesus to return. Why? What's going on here? Jesus and the 3 that was with him saw that there were arguments going on. Big arguments, a crowd of people. They were arguing, of course, with the 9 disciples that was left there. And the scribes, they were the key factors in the argument. Now, Mark didn't mention the subject. Mark, as he's writing his letter, he didn't mention the subject, what they were arguing about, fighting about. He didn't mention that subject. And Jesus and the other 3 disciples that were returning with him from Mount Transfiguration when they had came back, they were all there watching this fight that's going on, this argument that was taking place. Jesus told the 3 that was there with him to tell nobody about what you just got through doing. Don't tell nobody. If anybody asks you where you went, don't answer and tell them what you did. Keep it quiet. Yes, you saw Moses and you saw Elijah from the Old Testament. You saw transfiguration, but don't tell nobody if anybody asks. When Jesus arrived to the crowd, he began to address the scribes with a question. The first thing Jesus did when he got to the scribes, he had a question for them, because Jesus knew that they were the ones who were fueling the argument, that was causing the argument. Jesus knew that. It appears that they had been watching the 9 disciples who was left behind, and they was taunting them because of the 9 disciples was trying to do something that they thought they could do, and they were failing at it. So the scribes came and taught them is what they were doing. And since Jesus wasn't present, they just kind of had their way with Jesus. Let me explain what's going on right here. What was happening is that the 9 disciples who were left behind while Jesus and 3 of his other disciples went someplace else were failing miserably, trying to call a demon out of a young boy. And they were failing. It's what they were doing. All 9 of them were throwing everything they had into this exorcism, and they weren't able to do it. Well, it just so happened all the people in the crowd was watching. Aren't these Jesus' disciples? Shouldn't they be able to do this? And the last ones you want there is those religious scribes. That's the last ones you wanted in the crowd. And they were there, and they was taunting and teasing is pretty much what they were doing to Jesus' 9 disciples. So Jesus asked the scribes, what is the question that you're asking my disciples? Ask me. What's the question? What are you taunting them about? Verse number 17 and verse number 18 goes like this. And one of the multitude answered and said, Master, I have brought unto thee my son, which has a dumb spirit. And wheresoever it taketh him, he teareth him, and he foameth, and he gashes his teeth, and he pineth away. And I spoke to thy disciples that they should cast him out, and they couldn't do it. And all. Now, the person who came up to Jesus was this child's father, who was possessed by a demon. And the child's father just said, let me explain what's going on here. I brought my son to your disciples, and I let him know that this demon has hold to him. It's a deaf and dumb spirit, is pretty much what it is, meaning that it's not enabling him to talk. And it throws him around. Not just a boy just throwing around on his own strength. You can see like something's invisible tossing my son around. And there's nothing that he can do about it. So upon Jesus hearing this man question, he stepped out of the crowd and he explained to Jesus what his dilemma is. This is what all the problem is about. As he's telling Jesus, this is the father of the young kid who happens to be possessed by this demon. He said he had brought his son to Jesus to have him to exorcise this demon that had robbed his son of his speech and of his hearing. That means this boy was not able to communicate to anyone or to understand anyone. This demon had robbed this from him, from this boy. And this demon was causing this boy to self-destruct. And the boy couldn't do anything about it. And nobody else that was around couldn't do anything about it. What this demon was doing. He said, this description given by the father sounds like epileptic convulsions is what it sounded like. And they just came at will. And they just started doing their thing. If you've ever seen someone who's going through this particular problem, it's never announced when it happens. And the child or the person has nothing that they can do about it. They just fall out. They start foaming at their mouth. And there's nothing can be done about it. The best thing is to try to keep some comfort to the victim and to try to make sure that they're not going to hurt themselves while they're going through it. Well, this is what was going on with this demon that was in this here particular person. But the demon was causing more than this. He was doing more than this. The father also said to Jesus, the demon would throw him on the ground and he would foam at the mouth and he would gnash his teeth and he would become dried up and dry and he would become rigid and just stuck and cannot move. The father explained that he had spoken to the disciples about it, but the disciples couldn't do nothing. They couldn't do anything. Since Jesus was absent, they just went to the 9 disciples that was there to do it. But they had failed at their attempts. They did everything they thought they knew, but nothing worked. The demon just took them as jokes, as something that he wasn't going to pay no attention to. There was weak jokes. That's how the demon looked at Jesus' 9 disciples that was there. Jesus previously had given his disciples the power to cast out demons. And they went out and did this. They had no problem casting out demons. Jesus had gave them that authority over demons. And 9 disciples with authority over demons, just thought it was going to be a cakewalk as they went in and did the things that they had been taught to do. Cast out demons, exercise. And all the people, of course, knew that they had the ability to do it. And the scribes knew about Jesus' disciples with the ability to do it. Oh, but they were so happy to see that the Jesus disciples was failing. They were so happy to see that so that they can taunt them. So it was not out of line that the father approached Jesus and asked him, oh, this is what the problem is going right here. Now, what caused this inefficiency at the time? Why wasn't the 9 disciples who was there not able to cast this particular demon out? Why weren't they able to do that? After all, they had experience in casting out demons, and they knew how to do it. But why? Why wasn't they able to do this one? We need to understand that sickness like epilepsy, sicknesses like that, is not always demon-possessed. It's not always demon-possessed. Or on occasions like deafness is not always demon-possessed. It doesn't always automatically indicate that a person is demon-possessed. So we have to be careful when we draw conclusions about a person who may have these particular symptoms. So we have to be kind of careful about that if we ever come across it. I have back as a young kid, I saw people who have those attacks or whatever, and they always questioned me. I wondered about it. And it seemed like the next day when I talked to the victim of that epileptic attack, when I was a young kid, they don't even remember. Yeah, they don't even remember. But as we move on, Jesus had previously given his disciples the power to cast out demons, and they had no problem doing that. So it was not out of line for the Father to approach them, Jesus, and ask him about it. So that's what they were wondering about. Verse number 19 and verse number 20. When this was brought to Jesus' attention, this is what Jesus answered it to. Jesus answered to him. He's talking to the father of this young man who was demon possessed. Jesus said, "O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? And how long shall I suffer you? Bring him unto me." Bring him to me. So Jesus here, he pretty much grieved about it. Jesus was busy in Galilee, and the people, of course, knew that Jesus was able to work miracles. They saw it. And of course, Jesus, was doing these miracles with the foundation of faith. It's what was fueling his miracles. And the same thing would have worked for them as well. So Jesus was wondering, haven't you seen me? Haven't you heard me? Why can't you exercise the faith that I'm using to do these miracles that you don't quite understand? So he called them a faithless generation. Verse number 20, he says, bring him unto me, bring the boy unto me. And he says, and they brought him unto him. And when he saw him, straightway the spirit tear him, and he fell on the ground, wallowing in foam. So what happened here, at the moment they brought the boy to Jesus, the moment they brought him to him, they seemed to have had some type of control to bring the boy to Jesus. But the moment the demon within the boy saw Jesus, the moment he saw Jesus, he went mad. The demon went mad. When the boy saw Jesus, the demon in him threw a fit, is what the demon did. He threw him to the ground immediately. And what was so spooky about this, it looked like an invisible person would pick this boy up and toss him to the ground hard as it can. And once it got to the ground, it started foaming at the mouth. It started getting rigid and stiff is what it was doing. And this was happening in front of Jesus. The demon knew that his rule over this boy was about to come to an end because Jesus was present. And the demon knew that. But this demon did not want to let go of his victim at all, even if Jesus was standing there. So the demon responded with one last attack. Jesus is about to throw you out of me, but I'm going to do one last crazy attack on you. I'm going to go crazy with you is what I'm going to do. And this is what the demon was doing. So he threw the boy to the ground, showing his rebellion against Jesus. I'm rebelling against Jesus. I'm going to take my last attack on this boy. I'm going to grab him. I'm going to throw him back on the ground again. And there's nothing nobody can do about it. But Jesus is about to throw me out of him. So I am going to do as much as I can for the brief moment that I'm in him. Verse 21 and verse 22 go this way. And he asked the Father, Jesus asked the Father, while all this was going on, he asked the Father, how long is it ago since this came unto him? And he said, a child is what he said. I'll explain that. Verse number 22. And the Father is still talking to Jesus. He's talking to Jesus. He says, and oftentimes it has cast him in the fire and to the waters to destroy him. But if thou canst, that's bad to say to Jesus. But if you can, Jesus, do anything, have compassion on us and help us. This is what the Father is saying to Jesus. Meanwhile, what's happening is this boy is on the ground. He's screaming, he's slobbering, he's rolling around while all this is taking place. Jesus asked, how long has this been going on? Well, the person he asked was the right person, and that was the young man's father. How long has this been going on? The father said, since early childhood. Early childhood. So this has been an impossible situation. Ever since he was a little boy, this has been going on. And it's been impossible. There's nothing we can do about it. And it's been going on and going on. Perhaps Jesus asked this question for the benefit of the crowd. He wanted the crowd to know that this is something that only God can fix. It's been going on for ever since this child was, he was a small child. This way they would know that only God had the power to help with this boy. Only God had the power. Because this boy was clearly at the mercy of this strong demon. Clearly at the mercy of him. Verse number 23 and get verse 24. Jesus said unto him, if thou canst believe. That's what Jesus is saying. So Jesus is pretty much marking at the Father who asked, if you can do anything, Jesus. You're asking Jesus, the creator of everything that exists, if you can do anything. And this is what he's asking Jesus. If you can do anything. And Jesus fired back at him. If you can believe. If you can believe is what Jesus is saying in that 23rd verse. All things are possible to him that believe. It's obvious for you to question me if I can. It's obvious that you can't believe. And that seems to be your problem. And verse 24, it says this. It says, and straightway the father of the child cried out and said with tears, Lord, I believe. Help me with mine unbelief. So he cried out to Jesus, said, okay. I believe. I know I struggle with it, but help me. Help me with my unbelief. Now Jesus took the Father's word, the word about doubt. In that 22nd verse that we talked about a little bit earlier, Jesus says, if you can believe, you're asking me if I can do anything about it. Can you believe I can do anything about it? If you believe, yes, I will do something about it. But you got to believe first. You know, I like the way Jesus took care of this. If this man was going to display unbelief, faithlessness, Jesus wasn't going to do nothing. He wasn't going to do anything about it. He said, for me to answer your question, you've got to believe I can do it first. You've got to show me some faith. For without faith, it is impossible to do what? To please God. So without faith, I ain't going to do nothing. I'm going to stand here until you do something about your faith. That's why he came to Jesus and said, please help me about my faith. I know I'm weak in faith. Please help me about it. And so Jesus was showing the Father what the point is. The issue was not that Jesus could heal the boy. That wasn't the issue at all. The point was if the Father could believe, Jesus could heal the boy. That was the point. Let's get that squared away first before I do anything about this boy who's possessed by this demon. That was immediately taken care of, as we can see in the lesson right here. That the Father declared that his faith needed to be built up. It needed to be strengthened. And let's look at verse number 25. And I think some of the other following. 25, 26, and 27. Let's put all those together. And when Jesus saw that the people came running together, he rebuked the foul spirit. So saying unto him, thou dumb spirit, thou deaf spirit, I charge thee to come out of him and enter into him no more. And the 26th verse says, and the spirit cried out and rent him sore and came out of him. And he was as dead, insomuch that many said, the boy is dead. And verse 27 said, and Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up. At this point, everybody that was in the crowd, those that was far away and those that was close by, wanted to see what was about to happen. And the noise that was taking place, that was coming from this demon-possessed young man, as he was screaming and squirreling, and as he was throwing around, as he was doing all this, people came running to see what was happening, and they knew that Jesus was standing there in the midst. What is about to happen here? So without further delay, Jesus commanded the demon to come out the boy, and not only that, Jesus said, and don't you ever, you wicked demon, come back into him again. If you happen to be passing by, looking for something to do evil, and you happen to see this person, don't you dare come into him again. So Jesus warned him, pulled that demon out of this young boy, and warned him, commanded him, don't you ever come back to him again. Once again, the demon acted violently. Oh, that just drove the demon crazy for this right here, causing the boy to shriek out with a loud rage, being thrashed around on the ground, screaming at the same time, just totally out of control. This was happening as the demon was leaving the boy's body. As he was leaving the body, he was just doing his last bit of evil. His last bit is what he could do. After the boy lay there as though he was dead. When the demon finally left, the boy was laying there as a corpse on the ground, as like nothing could be done. It's too late. He's dead. Jesus, there's nothing you could do. Nothing. The disciples who was watching this said this was a big one. There's nothing he could do. The boy is dead. The people gathered around and concluded that there were no signs of life. As they examined him from a slight distance, there's no signs of life in this boy. He's dead. And at this point, Jesus calmly reached down and took the boy by the hand and helped him to stand up. The demon had done his best to kill this boy. He did his absolute best to kill him. But you got to remember something. This boy was protected by a hedge of God that was around him, by the presence of Jesus. Devils, no matter who they are or what they can do, they can only do so much. There's a protection that is around them that they can't go beyond. He did not have the authority to take this boy's life at all. So that was something that he could not do. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't take the boy's life. That was not given to him to be able to do. You know, that's a good thing. When we are attacked by evil forces, they can only go so far with us. So far with us. We are protected beyond what they can do. And Jesus reached down and picked this young kid up because Jesus knew that he was alive. The power of Jesus was more than enough. His healing was complete. Not only his healing was complete, but he was free from that demon that had been riding him practically all his life. Now he's able to breathe freely. He's able to speak to his Father. He's able to hear and understand. He's able to hold his Father in love. He's able to do all those things that he wasn't able to do then. He was also had physical strength. He was able to stand up for the first time and go on as a normal young man. He was able to do this in front of all these witnesses. Now, you and I, as we're listening to this and watching it, we can only imagine as the demon left, as this angry, evil demon left. We can only imagine how this demon felt. He may have said, "Ha, ha, ha, Jesus, I left you a dead corpse. Ha, ha, ha. Now it's your move, Jesus. You do something with this dead corpse. I left you that." And he laughed and went on into demon land, or wherever he was coming from. "I left you a corpse. Your move, Jesus. What are you going to do?" Jesus took the boy by the hand and raised him up. Totally 100% healed. And don't forget the crowd. Don't forget the crowd. The crowd who saw this was silent as they saw this. And don't forget the scribes, enemies of Jesus. What did they do? Well, time to go home. Nothing they could do. Time to go home. Jesus worked a miracle, and it was a powerful miracle in the sight of us, and we saw this. Let's go to verse number 28 and 29. You know, there's still a lot to be said, and these two verses here are going to say it as we start wrapping this lesson up. Verse 28 and verse number 29, it says this: "And when he had come to the house," the crowd dispatched at the time. The young boy went home with his father. Everything was fine. The people went back. So Jesus and his disciples, not only just the 9, but the other 3 that was with him, went, and they went to a different place, or whatever. It said to a house or a dwelling place. When they all 12 of them got at this dwelling place, I say, and when he came to the house, the disciples asked him privately, "Why could not we cast him out? Why couldn't we do it?" It's what they asked Jesus. They asked him that privately. That was with nobody else around. Jesus, we did everything you told us what to do. We've done it before. We have experience on casting out demons. We can exorcise demons. We've been doing that. And why is it we gave this one our absolute best, and we weren't able to do this one? Verse number 29 said, "And he said to them," and Jesus said to them, this kind is what Jesus said. What did Jesus mean by that? This kind? We're talking about a demon, right? Jesus said this kind. This kind of what? This kind of demon. A demon is a demon, right? All of us are demons. They're all the same? No. But this kind is a little different from the other demons that you've experienced. And we're going to find that as we go in between the lines. What did Jesus mean by that? When you come across this kind of a problem, when you come across that, finishing up that verse, this kind can come forth by nothing but this. Nothing but prayer and fasting is what Jesus said. How to deal with one of those, this kind. Let's explain this kind. Let's explain it. Jesus and his disciples had left the crowd behind and went into a private house. There where the disciples asked Jesus, "Why did we fail so miserably?" How embarrassing that was in front of everybody. And we did our absolute best. We did everything that we know. We have cast out demons before. We had power over exorcism. We had no problem with it before. But we were not able to cast this demon out. Then you came along, Jesus, and you accomplished it with ease, with no problems. The disciples knew that they had been given authority to cast out demons. They knew that. And most of the people in the crowd knew it too. But what happened to our miracle power? Our miracle power went to sleep on us in front of the public. And we did all that we knew. The problem is they had relied on themselves instead of the power of God. They did all that they knew, but how about using the power of God? Oh, we're getting ready to get awfully deep on this one. I pray you're ready for it. This was what happened here. the this kind is what Jesus said, the this kind. This was one of the more powerful demons. This was a heavyweight. This was one that wasn't going to be thrown out by just anybody. This was a heavyweight demon. He had evil under control. Nobody was going to tell him what to do or cast him out. Nobody. But Jesus says on the powerful ones, when you come across the heavyweights, there's only one thing that's going to defeat the heavyweight. And once I share this with you, you're going to say, oh yeah, that makes sense. On that last verse, Jesus, he mentioned, how can you defeat one of those this kind of problems? I'm sure you have come across a this kind of situation. A this kind of situation is one that you thought you can control. And you put everything in it that you thought you could do. But it turned out with all of your expertise, all of your experience, all that your know-how, you still are not able to deal with this kind of a problem that you are facing. This is what this demon was. He was one of those this kind of problems that you dealt with. Jesus said this is how you deal with one of those this kind of problems, a heavyweight problem. Jesus, when it comes to those powerful demons, those powerful problems, those powerful situations that you have to deal with, the disciples went with this, and they went to this problem without a grain of faith. Without a grain of faith. Jesus makes it clear, and you'll understand this in just one moment. Jesus said, without a grain of faith. And he described a grain of faith as a mustard seed. You're all familiar with that. And Jesus also said that small grain of faith, that mustard seed, has the power to move mountains. Mountains is described as something big and powerful that can't be moved by anybody, that'll sit there to stand for thousands and thousands of years. A mountain is a big one. That's a big. But if you have a grain of real faith, you can move that mountain, is what Jesus is saying. And with a grain of faith, you can cast out strong demons. With that grain of faith. With that grain of faith, you can cast out situations and problems that mentally you can't do. Or things that you've done before, but they ain't working today. With that grain of faith is what will take care of it for you. And you see, that's what his disciples weren't using. And that is what made Jesus say, where is you guys' faith at? Where's your faith? They weren't using that grain of faith. That faith that can move mountains and that faith that can cast out strong demons. They weren't using it. He said, this kind you have to do. Now, before I close, you're probably asking the question, where do we get this strong faith from? Where do we get it? Jesus says you need two things to do this with. This is the formula to kick in that supercharged prayer. Prayer first, and it has to be supercharged. You understand what I mean by supercharged? It has to be prayer that's supercharged. How do you supercharge a prayer? To make it accomplish more than what it could yesterday. Simple. By fasting. Fasting is how you supercharge your prayer. That doesn't make sense, huh? Fasting? Skipping something? Skipping a meal? Skipping something? How does that make any sense? Have you ever noticed something? Whenever you went to a fast and you was taking something from your flesh that you were accustomed to, and you wanted to complete this fast, so it was a challenge between you and your flesh. This challenge between you and the flesh. And you prayed, but your prayer to be able to defeat that flesh is going to have to be supercharged. Prayer And fasting, whenever you fasting, you notice how close you are to God when you're doing that. And the reason why you're close to him is because you want to be successful with your fast. You want to be able to get from the beginning of it and make it to the end. And you know that the power of God can carry you through that. So you're closer to God when you are fasting and praying at the same time. Now your prayer becomes supercharged and mountains can be moved and super demons can be defeated. Praise God. Praise God. At this time, I think I accomplished my assignment. My assignment was to read in between some lines that can help you with strengthening your faith and how you can defeat super demons. Amen. God bless you. Amen. We look forward to seeing you again. God bless.